Greetings. Thank you for viewing this webinar. My name is Dr. Hilda Billups, and I currently serve as the chair of the Webinars Committee for TACUSPA, the Texas Association of College and University Student Personnel Administrators. You will notice we have changed the format for this webinar just a bit. This is one of our pre-recorded webinars. In these pre-recorded webinars, we seek to learn from experienced student affairs leaders. Our guest for today is Shelby Hearn, who serves as president-elect for TACUSPA. Allow me to introduce our facilitator for today's webinar. Dr. Anthony Edwards supports TACUSPA as the Director of Research and is a member of the Webinars Committee. Anthony serves as an assistant professor in the Department of Educational Leadership and Technology at Tarleton State University. Anthony's teaching assignments include higher education leadership, higher education student services, higher education finance, higher education policy and politics, higher education history, and the Comprehensive Community College. Dr. Edwards previously served as director of Tarleton Online at Tarleton State University, a professor of biology at Panola College, senior vice president of talent at the Fort Worth Chamber of Commerce, and a science department chair at Granbury High School. Dr. Edwards also served as a secondary science teacher in Fort Worth ISD and Huckabee ISD. Anthony's research agenda focuses on organizational change in higher education with respect to strategic planning, STEM education, higher education marketing, academic advising, and educational technology. Anthony has published manuscripts in the Journal of Higher Education Management and the HAPS Educator. In addition to chairing dissertation committees, Anthony supports student success as coordinator of the Higher Education Leadership Concentration of the Master of Education Program and Educational Administration. We're very excited to have Dr. Edwards serve as our facilitator for this webinar, and are thankful to Shelby for her willingness to share. I will now turn our webinar over to Dr. Edwards.
Thank you, Dr. Billups. So our panelist today is Shelby Hearn. And Shelby is a dedicated scholar practitioner, and she has extensive experience in higher education. She currently serves as Assistant Director of the Office of Community Standards and the Galveston Aggie Honor System Office within the Campus Living and Learning Department there at Texas A&M University, Galveston. And in that role, she oversees student conduct, academic integrity, hazing prevention education, crisis response. And she also serves on both the Behavioral Intervention Team Steering Committee, as well as the JED Student Wellness Team. She's also a doctoral candidate in educational administration at Texas A&M University. Whoop. And she also has a research agenda that is focused on how student affairs professionals engage in conversations around pluralism, religious identity, and organizational culture, particularly within student organizations at Christian institutions in the Bible Belt. In addition to her campus role, Shelby serves as president-elect of TACUSPA. In this role, she actively supports mentorship, collaboration, and leadership development among student affairs professionals across Texas. And if you've gotten a chance to interact with her, you know that's true. Passionate about student success, meaningful engagement, and professional growth, Shelby brings with her a values-driven approach to every space that she enters, building communities of care, accountability, and continuous learning. All right, so please join me in welcoming Shelby. Thank you for joining us today.
Of course. Thanks for having me. This is great.
All right, let's get started. So tell us a little bit about a challenge that you have faced in being a leader in student affairs, and what were some strategies you used to overcome that challenge?
Yeah, so I think that the first challenge is knowing that my education is not going to teach me everything I need to know to be successful in my roles. I think that with any role that you take on, there's going to be new challenges, new environment, new spaces for new opportunities for you to create space for new people, new environments, new learning. And so a part of being in a leadership role is being able to navigate campus politics, being able to really put relationships at the forefront of your mind, and remembering that people are human. At the end of the day, I want people to treat me like I'm human, and I want others to feel really motivated and driven, and fulfilled when they're in spaces that I'm in. I think one of the biggest challenges in that is you never know what you're kind of walking into. And I think that sometimes I feel like I learned this lesson the hard way. Um, you can share things with people regardless of what it's about, and things can be twisted and turned into different things, and you can't control that narrative. And so I think that as I've grown into this field, I've really learned in different ways, different positions, how navigating conversations with people is always going to be a challenge. People are the hardest part of these jobs. Peopling is what I like to call it, because the reality is everyone is so different. Everyone is unique. They're individualistic, and if we don't approach our conversations like that or our interactions, first remembering that they're human, and second, remembering that we're all here for the same common goal. And so I think that sometimes in those challenges, it can be, interacting with someone who maybe took something you said to heart or took something and twisted it a little bit different and maybe shared it with someone else. And then you're kind of like running after the rabbit trying to figure out, wait, no, that's not me. Like, oh, wait, you didn't assume positive intent? Oh, wait. And then you're like trying to run after these things and like create a credible reputation for yourself or feel like you have to nip it in the bud. And so I think that I've learned a lot about like just letting people exist, and if they are upset with me or if there's something that I've done that has like caused harm, I hope that the people that I work with have enough respect and enough um grace to be like, hey Shelby, that really bothered me and I want to talk about it. And that's one of the things that I think is sometimes can get a little messy in our field is you want to make sure that you're doing the right thing and that everyone sees you the way that you want to be perceived. But that's not the reality, right? Everyone has
Mhm.
their own perception. They're going to take things to heart or take things differently than it's intended. But what I like to do or what I've learned through this experience is really just, am I assuming positive intent? And also, am I letting them bring the issues to me instead of chasing after them and trying to figure it out? Because the reality is, there's always going to be conflict. Conflict simply is. Dr. Nance Algert, one of my favorite faculty members, she's now retired actually in College Station. Um, she always used to say, conflict simply is. It's not good, it's not bad, it just
Mhm.
is. And I just love that because it's so true. Like if you want to resolve a conflict, you have to talk about it, you have to face it, and you have to move forward. And also, you have to look at overall, like, what did I learn through this? What did I learn about myself? What did I learn about
Mhm.
others and how they perceived me in this situation? And then take those lessons, put them in your pocket, and keep moving because that's ultimately what you have to do in this field.
Right. Yeah, I agree with you. I think sometimes there can be a tendency among some folks to avoid conflict because it's uncomfortable, and sometimes having the quote unquote crucial conversations is not always easy or fun. And so sometimes we tiptoe around those things, or we don't have the conversations that need to be had. But the reality is we grow more, I think, from the difficult conversations than we do from the easy conversations. Leadership, I think sometimes on the outside looking in, we look at leadership as, oh, those are the important people and they get to do cool stuff. But unfortunately, there's a lot of other stuff that comes with the mantle of leadership, right? And it's both rewarding and challenging, and sometimes those two things happen at the same time. But in terms of your leadership style, what would you say is your leadership style, and how does that guide you and how you make decisions?
Yeah, so I love leadership. I actually studied leadership as my minor when I was in college at Stephen F. Austin State University.
All
And
right, Axum. Okay.
yeah, accent jacks, what's up? I'm working on an axe handle wall that's gonna go in front of me in my office, so I'm excited for that. But I think that when I studied leadership curriculum or leadership theories, I think the one that resonated deeply with me, and still to this day I feel it to my core, is servant leadership. I
Mm,
want others to see me doing the work, to know that I am gonna be right alongside them working with him to make this happen. I think that it comes from a place of um, growing up. I think I was always taught to like be serving others, to be taking care of other people's needs or desires. And I think that as that's translated into my adulthood, I think that it just shows up in every space I'm in. There's always, if there's a task, if someone's like, hey, can anyone lead this presentation on this date? And then there's just like extreme awkward silence. Everyone's like not making eye contact. They're like, not me.
Right.
Please don't select me. I'm like the first person to be like, I'll do it. Not because I necessarily want to give the presentation, but because I want to be helpful. And so coming from a place of like always wanting to be a helper, wanting to help lead people to success and lead people to other opportunities, um, has just been a huge core value of mine. I think it shows up in the way that I work with people and how I'm never going to put them in situations that I'm not also willing to be in myself. But it also says, I think this shows up a lot with TACUSPA conference planning. Um, I am not going to just sit and be like, oh yeah, they've got it. I'm going to be like, hey, what can I do to support you? How can I help you? Give me a task. Let me help. Let me run with this. And I think that I hope that that's being perceived as really helpful for the conference chairs. I think that um, it's just been really, really exciting um, to serve people in even little capacities. Like, hey, Shelby, can you run sponsorships? Yeah, absolutely. I will do that. Just stepping in and being able to help out where it's needed. When I was interviewing for jobs a couple of years ago, I had I had shared that I want to be in a space where I'm able to fill a gap where leadership sees on their campus is needed. Not necessarily a specific position or title or even like org structure. I don't necessarily care about those pieces. I care about being able to be helpful and be
Mm.
seen as making an impact and feel the impact that I'm making on our campus. And so when I was in College Station, I think that because of the bigger campus at Texas A&M, there you have very specific roles, and you're really
Mm.
intended. You can make an impact in your role with who you're over. So I supported the largest student-run organization in the nation, which is the Big Event. I love the Big Event. It's a really cool service project opportunity for
Right.
students to give back to the community. But when I was in that organization, or when I was over in that position, I only felt like I had this much of influence and impact on the whole campus, right? Because I could only control the pieces that I was working with. And then I came to Texas A&M Galveston, and I currently serve as the Assistant Director of Community Standards. I oversee the Office of Community Standards and our Aggie Honor System office, and both of those have very, very different needs and processes. And so um, I think that as I've taken on this new role, not only do I have the opportunity to um, gain certifications in like risk management and working with Homeland Security on trainings and things I never thought I would get access to or have the ability to work in. A&M Galveston is giving me, and I think that what I'm seeing here at the smaller campus is that they see the leadership skills I have, they see the passion that I have for student success, and they're like, here's 6 million things that you could help us with and help us accomplish. So I serve on the Student Success Initiatives Committee. I serve on the JED Campus Wellness Team for strategic planning for our campus. I serve on the care team. And so there's like a lot of opportunities that I'm able to kind of do multiple functional areas all in one. But more than anything, I feel like I'm being poured into and I'm being
Mhm.
developed. And I think that that's kind of the best case scenario. I think that that was exactly what I was looking for in my job search. Because, I talked to a lot of younger professionals, new graduate students who are looking for jobs. And sometimes it can be quick to just be like, oh, I got to find the next thing. I just got to find the job. But finding the right job and the right people that are going to see you and see your worth and see what you can do currently and what you can do in 10 years, or motivating you to move along the way to learn these different things to be the better professional that you can be. So I I know that was a long answer, but genuinely just feel like my leadership style shows up in that in servant leadership, and it also um, I think that that's why this position works really well for me is I'm able to wear multiple hats, and also I'm getting the learning piece that I really desired.
That makes sense. I mean, knowing you for a while, I think that servant leadership does make sense for you, and I think you are a leader that likes to lead by example. And I do think good leaders coach people in a way that shows them what success looks like. It's one thing to demand and expect success from people. It's another thing to actually coach them on what that looks like and help them see that they could do it too. Um,
Yeah.
so, because I think we too often we have leaders who will tell you, "Hey, this is what I need you to do," and then leave it to you to figure out how to get it done, and then not be happy when it's not meeting their expectations. And so I think by getting in there and doing the presentations and doing these other, getting involved in these other events, it shows people like, okay, this is what that looks like. So if I'm going to communicate with students or communicate with parents or do these things, this is what that looks like. Um, or I'm going to give a presentation. That's what it looks like. And that I think that's really helpful. And I would say, you know, for you, at least, I mean, you had the benefit of, having gone to SFA, gone to A&M. Both of these institutions, in one way or another, sort of, they have a culture of leadership. And so they sort of, when you arrive on some of these campuses, they sort of, there's a culture of saying, we don't know what you thought of yourself before you got here, but now that you're here, you are a leader in training. And un unfortunately, not everybody gets that conversation, right? And so sometimes people see themselves as I do student affairs, but they don't necessarily see themselves as a student affairs leader. How do you help coach, or how does the light on come on for you to become a student affairs leader, and what does that look like sort of in your head of translating being a student affairs practitioner to being a student affairs leader?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think that it first starts with just a little overview of my experience and how I got here. So I started out at Stephen F. Austin, got really heavily involved. I joined the Freshman Leadership Academy. Back then, we had to write essays to get into the Leadership Academy. Now I think you just apply and you get in. But we had to write essays, and I remember spending so many hours working on my essay. I was so excited. I was at Splashtown, which now this will predate this whole webinar, because Splashtown's closing. But I was in Spring, Texas, in Splashtown when I got the email from SFA that I had been accepted to the Freshman Leadership Academy. I was so ecstatic. And I remember sitting in the freshman webinar course or the session, SFA 101 basically was like the course. And I remember seeing Dr. Adam Peck stand up there, and I think he was wearing like a purple bow tie or a purple tie or something. And he was just like super quirky and excited, and really you could tell that he really cared about getting students involved in co-curricular opportunities. And so I remember meeting him at the end of that session, and I was like, I want to be a leader. I want to get involved. What do I do? And I really had my whole purpose of going to college was to create a community. I didn't actually decide I wanted to go to college until my senior year of my last semester. So it was like spring of my senior year. And I was like, well, I guess I should start applying to colleges. And at that point, I didn't really know like that I had already missed a huge deadline, which was December 1 in the fall for major campus enrollment. And I consider myself a first generation college student. I come from a low income background. While my dad does have a college degree, he didn't live in the home. And so didn't really have access to a lot of that information that could have been helpful for me as a college student. So kind of went in and was just like, okay, I don't really know what this is. I want to make friends. I want to build community. And SFA just, I fell in love the moment I stepped on campus. So I remember talking to Dr. Peck, who was the dean of students at the time, and he was like, let's get you involved. He's like, have you heard of the big event? And I'm like, no, what's the big event? He's like, well, let me come introduce you. He introduces me to their advisor. I get really connected, ended up getting a leadership position in the organization. And then fast forward, I was an orientation leader, a Jack Camp counselor. But the really pivotal piece for me was when I was hired to be an involvement advisor. So I actually got to work with organizations to understand their purpose, their mission, and then meet with students one-to-one and say, okay, what kind of experiences are you looking for out of college? What do you want to get and what do you want to gain out of this? And in those interactions, I learned so much about students, I learned so much about myself, and also about how I could motivate others to get connected, just like Dr. Peck was doing for me. And so it kind of came full circle. And I remember going to his office and being like, I need to change my major. I don't know what I'm going to do. And I remember him grabbing like this really long sheet of paper and he's like, drew these big circles. And he's like, okay, what are the things that you're interested in? And I'm like, uh, service. I don't know, service, leadership. And I think at that time, I think I said ministry. And so he's like, well, have you ever heard of student affairs? And of course, we had that, conversation where he tried to talk me out of it a little bit. It was like, this isn't all fun and rainbows and it is hard work. Like there are times where you have to notify parents of student deaths or there are crisis situations that you have to deal with. And I remember just being more like thrilled and excited about the opportunity. And so he's like, you got everything out of SFA that you can get. It's time for you to go somewhere else. But that experience that I had transformed me as a leader. I was working with what I considered the best of the best in our field. Dr. Peck is amazing, and more than anything, he cares so deeply about seeing students to the finish line. Like he wants you to walk along this, like wants to walk alongside you to help you get to accomplish your goals. And my junior year, I was not selected to be a student director for the big event. And I remember just absolutely feeling like the world was over. Um, I felt betrayed in a way by the university, and it kind of put a sour taste in my mouth at the end of the experience. Um, and me and my roommate both weren't selected, and we decided we were like, should we just drop out? Like, and we were really, really considering dropping out of college because that we had put our whole student leader identity into this one organization. And through that, Dr. Peck came alongside both of us and said, no, we're going to find you another opportunity. We're going to get you connected and we're going to get you to graduation. And, if you had the pleasure of knowing him, you knew that he was just always he's that connector, that glue. And that's what I aspire to be. I want to be the mentor for people who are seeking mentorship, but have not been given the chance to have a mentor. And I think that the way in which leadership comes full circle and how it's showing up right now in my life is very, fulfilling. Right now I'm mentoring 3 new professionals, all happen to be women in the field and are all at different stages. One is about to graduate with their master's. Another one is actually, she's also about to graduate with her master's, but she's actually at SFA. And then another one is currently taking a pause in higher education, but is working on their doctorate program. And so, it's this weird situation where I'm like, am I old enough to mentor people? But honestly, like, I think anyone can be a mentor because mentorship is not you telling them advice and giving them all the things that they need to be successful. It's you walking alongside them through the journey and saying, I'm here. And I think that's what Dr. Peck did for me, is regardless of what situations were going on, he was like, I'm here. And I think that's what leadership is. I think that servant leadership really comes into play when you're able to pull people along in the journey that you're going on and help them get to places that they can't even imagine. Um, and, you know, it's being authentic, it's being human, it's taking the moment to say, I'm gonna help you out where you need help and support you in what you need. And focusing less on your ego and yourself, and because it's not about you. Even saying that I mentor people felt weird for me because it's not about me. It's about the people who are going to, in 20 years, 30 years from now, are going to be presidents of universities and vice presidents of student affairs and universities and campuses. And I feel blessed and honored to have even just a sliver of their journey and pouring into them and being developed, because that's really what all leadership is about. It's what it's not about me to be on the top, to be the president, to be this. It's about who am I pulling up with me to these opportunities so that they also can have the moments to develop, to grow, and to learn how to be the best versions of themselves.
That's such a powerful tribute to Dr. Pack, and such also just a lot of great lessons there. I think mentorship is an important thing, not just for us to get mentored, but to mentor other people. I think we grow from doing both. But I think sometimes when we think of mentoring, we think of who's going to mentor me, but not necessarily how can we help somebody else. And but again, that goes back to that mindset of realizing, yes, I do have something that might actually help somebody else. Because I think sometimes we don't always think that. Um, but I think that, whether you're been in the profession, a year or 5 years or 10 years or more, you've learned something that somebody could benefit from. So uh, don't keep all of your great ideas to yourself. Uh,
Exactly.
so I'm going to shift gears a little bit. So, you've been doing student affairs work in different places for a while. Um, what do you see as some of the major current challenges in the profession?
Yeah, definitely politics. Navigating a series of changes that are unprecedented and also just rapid. It feels like we're in a state of um, rapid change. And I think sometimes in rapid change, we can feel like everything is on fire. The world is on fire. Everything, my job's on fire, my family's on fire, my personal life, everything is on fire. And because we're seeing so much media across the world and all the
Mhm.
crises and everything else that's happening globally, I think that we can always feel uneasy and
Mm,
stressed and overwhelmed because there's a lot of change. And so that's what I'm seeing in the field right now is there's a lot of change. But the reality, that's not going to change, ironically. um, Change is always going to be there. It's going to look different year to year. And I think that a lot of the conversations I've been having with students currently who are struggling with this change, maybe so I work at a maritime academy here at Texas A&M Galveston. We're one of six maritime academies in the United States.
mhm,
I work with a lot of cadets who are excited to go into the maritime industry, or I work with a student leader who is really excited to go into Parks and Rec after they graduate. Well, with funding options and things getting changed and shifted, they're like, wait, so now I'm not able to be, in Parks and Wildlife in the positions that they want, like they no longer exist. And so having conversations with students to say that, you know, finding your purpose can look different in a different position. You found your
mhm.
purpose, you found what you want to do. Now we just have to find a way for it to happen. And I think that sometimes that's how I view where we're at in this field is we're still doing the same work virtually. We're still working extremely hard to make sure that students are having the holistic experience that they need to be successful outside of the four walls of our college or 4 years of their college experience. And so I think that if we continue to show up every single day, I mean, even yesterday, I showed up for work. I was really not feeling great, but I was like, you know what? I'm here because that's what our students need. That's what our campuses need. We just need to continue to show up and identify ways that we can collectively make change.
Hmm.
And that's going to look different for everyone. So, like for me, filling my bucket is making sure I'm having an impact on the work I'm doing. And if you can find that and you can still navigate that amongst all the change, I think that's what resiliency is. And that's what working in a field like this, I think honestly, probably working in any field, there's always going to be challenges. There's always going to be change. Um, so how I think that what matters the most is how you show up and how you react to that
Hmm.
change and how you continue to persist through it. And that's what resilience is.
Yeah, my old dissertation chair, it was really big on the book Who Moved My Cheese.
Yeah, I have a
And
copy.
the reality is I think that we're kind of in a who moved my cheese moment in higher ed. And so the if I put my biology teacher hat back on, when you think about evolution, there's a theory in evolution called punctuated equilibrium, which is a fancy term for meaning there's a whole bunch of time where there's not much change, and then there's a few periods of time where there's a whole lot of change. And then you go back to not much change. And I think we're potentially in the early stages of a period where there's going to be a lot of change. And then the question, like you said, becomes, how do we remain resilient within that period of change? Because while change can be stressful, change also brings lots of opportunity. And so I do still believe that there is value for higher ed, and I think there is opportunity for higher ed and student services in particular to demonstrate that value. And so I like the way that you answered that question because, again, I think a lot of people get caught up in other things that are not within the scope of our control. But I do think if you are in student services or student affairs, uh, you do have some control over supporting and serving students. And I think the more that we continue to do that and the more we document and tell our story about what it is that we do, I think the more opportunity is going to come your way because, again, I think the way that and I had talked about this on a previous interview, but there was a trend in the past where college presidents always came out of academic affairs. And if you've seen the last 10 years or so, we're seeing a lot of college presidents coming from other parts of the campus and outside of higher ed for that matter. Um, but I think there is tremendous opportunity for student affairs professionals right now because, again, like you said, if you're getting opportunity with the behavioral intervention team, or you're getting opportunity to go help with the big event, or all these different things, and you're picking up all of these different skills and resources and background knowledge that can prepare you for other leadership roles. And so I think we can look at the glass as half empty, or we can look at it as half full and see the opportunities that are ahead of us. Um, so I guess transitioning out of that, what I would like to ask you is, we as someone who works with some of the graduate students who are in the profession, many of these graduate students are in their earlier stages of their careers in higher ed. So some of them are transitioning. We know some in TACUSPA who've joined new roles in the last, 6 months or so. What is some advice you would give new leaders in their first 90 days in their new role?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I remember first, I want to share one other thing that came to mind in our last question. And that is that sometimes you have to elbow your way into the table.
Mhm,
And that's what I've learned in this role is a lot of times you have to get in the spaces that you need to be in order to make that change. But
mhm,
then the major key is telling others how to do that. It's not saying, oh, well, I'm at the table, so good luck. It's saying, no, this is the steps I took to get where I'm at. I can also advocate on this side. Hey,
mhm.
we should bring in this person to come into this conversation. So I wanted
Right.
to add that small note because I think that that's really good advice for anyone that's in a leadership position or going to a new campus with new environment, new politics, new things. Um, but with graduate students and new professionals, the first thing I'll say I had this conversation a couple of days ago actually with one of my mentees, and a mentor shared with me back in her name is Kelly Hartnett. She works at Texas A&M in College Station as an academic advisor, and previously she worked in Res Life with me. She's my first supervisor. She hired me, but I got a call from her one day, and it was, "Hey Shelby, I saw your resume. Um, I know that this isn't everything that you've done, and you're kind of like not getting as many points as we want you to, but we're trying to understand like what's going on." And I said, "What do you mean? Like I was told in our graduate program that you're supposed to remove experiences off your resume as you get more experience, right?" So this whole time I've been not getting jobs. I was the last person in my cohort to get a job on campus or to any campus. And at first I was like, what am I doing wrong? But it took this one leader to tell me, hey, you know, you're supposed to add your undergraduate experience on your resume so that you can actually get your foot in the door to be interviewed. So that completely changed my mind. It changed my life. And when I was reviewing one of my mentees' resumes last week, she told me, she's like, she has a 1-page resume. And I was like, girl, what is this? Where's all your experience? I'm like, so tell me about what you did before this. And she's like, I was a leader of this organization. I worked on campus as a student leader, a student worker. And like, I'm like, where are those experiences? They need to be there. And so I've been able to like really use the advice that I learned from a mentor and then pass it
Mm,
down to another graduate student who is currently working on her going into a doctoral program in the fall and also looking for a new job. And so uh, being able to get sent back her resume and see the second version of it where she has her awards and her achievements on her resume, like things that she didn't even think that should be on there, she added.
mm,
So and another piece of that is knowing that state experience, regardless of whether you're a student worker, graduate student, whatever, it counts as state experience. And sometimes it counts as full-time experience
mhm,
in the job search process. And so I think for new graduate students, new professionals, don't be afraid to put things on your resume. I think we have this gold standard that we want it to be like 1 to 2 pages. But if you see my resume, you'd probably be like, because it's not that. And I don't necessarily want it to be that because it doesn't
mhm,
fully tell the story of what matters to me and what experiences I have really gained throughout my time in this field. Now, I do believe that as graduate students go on and get full-time professional experience, that undergraduate experience will slowly fade off. But I think that there's just an opportunity for us as a field to talk about that more. It drastically impacted my job search, and I saw another student also had drastically different experience. Um, Additionally, I think that when we get straight out of graduate school or undergrad, we are fired up. As new professionals, we are fired up. We just learned all the theories, we just learned all the issues of higher education, and we think it's our job to go out and completely change the world. And I used to get so angry at one of my faculty members in my PhD program because he would say, your job is not to change the world. And I'm like, yes, it is. Like, I truly believe that I can make an impact and change this world. Small increments of change over time creates larger change. And I used to get so amped up about that. But I think that reflecting on how I was as a new professional, I remember the conversations that I had with the director of our area. And I was very quick to judge. I was very quick to be like, why are y'all doing it this way? And didn't really understand the full context or scenario or environment that I was really working in. Um, and so I think that sometimes new professionals can get in spaces and be like really, really uncomfortable and dissatisfied by the reaction that you get when you're trying to be an advocate or a change maker. Change can happen differently, and you have to find your approach and intentionally find your window of where you're going to make change. But it's not by going in and just being extremely critical and finding like opportunities just to pick out all the holes. Um,
Mhm.
and that was one of the biggest life lessons I had to learn as a new professional. And I hope other professionals can avoid that. And not to say that their voices does not matter at all, because that's not true. I think you have to find the right time and the space that your voice is contributing to that, and also be willing to walk in with an open mind and learn all the avenues and the complexities of the organization, of the campus culture, and
Mhm.
how that shows up. Because if we're excited and really passionate and ready to throw theory at people, or be like, wait, what's your student development theory perspective or approach philosophy, sometimes that can be off-putting to other
Mhm.
professionals who've been working in this field for 20 plus years, because it's different, right? So I think as new professionals, channeling that energy through work in associations, or channeling that energy in your advocacy work outside of your field or outside of the role that you're in, finding ways that you can get leadership's ear, but in a strategic way, instead of just like really out the gate want to show your leadership off, want to show your strategy, but also not knowing the dynamics of what that can say, and also how you can be perceived in that situation.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Now, as director of research for TACUSPA, I got to throw research in there somewhere. And I saw you, or heard you talk a little bit about, different theories and things like that. But you are in a doctoral program now, correct?
I am.
So, could you talk? This is a multi-part question. Could you talk about kind of a little bit about your journey and kind of selecting a topic that was interesting to you and figuring out, how you're starting to think about how you want to study that, topic that you're interested in, and how you balance work and school, and how, and even if you don't, like, just be honest with us about what that's
Yeah.
like, um, and and also how that experience is shaping maybe your mindset around a connection between theory and practice, or research and practice.
Great question. Yeah, so I think that the first thing I want to say is that when I started out this journey of trying to even look at doctoral programs, I was told by many, many, many faculty and staff and leaders in this field, to not do it. They were like, don't do your doctorate yet. Like, you need to get more experience in the field. You need to go out and do and learn in that way before you come back and pursue your full time, pursue education. And I think that it's kind of ironic, because if you look at other fields, that's kind of like looking at doctors and being like, yeah, you don't need a PhD. Don't worry. Just go out and work for a little bit and then come back and get your doctorate. And I think that I'm hoping that we're seeing, I think we're seeing a shift in our field, and how at one point we'll probably be oversaturated with doctorates. And I think that that is actually a good problem to have, because the reality is that's more and more people that want to learn to be better, and to be more so that they can better support the systems that we're operating in. So the first thing was, don't do it, go get experience. The second thing was, um, if you're going to do it, don't go full time. And I was like, I don't know why I'm getting all this advice. Because as a doctoral student, or as a master's student who had just graduated, I was still trying to navigate, like, No, like I didn't really fully get my master's experience how I wanted. It was during COVID. I didn't get to do research. There was just some things that were lacking for me. And so um, a lot of faculty members would say you don't want to be overeducated and underexperienced.
Mm,
And I was like, yes, I do agree. I think that you can find yourself in a scenario where you're extremely overeducated and you don't have enough experience. So in that sense, I did listen to their advice, and that's why I chose to do full-time work as well as full-time school. So I started out in 2021, fall of 21. So I think I'm going in my 5th year, something like that. And I did not know what I was getting myself into. If I'm being honest, I think that I didn't realize the location bound piece where like I needed to be on
mm,
site on campus for at least 3 to 4 years, depending on how long my coursework would take. And so going in, I was very like, let's get this done. Like, let's go through the course, do as many courses as possible. And what I learned in that is that, you kind of lose yourself a little bit if you're not taking care of yourself. And so there was a semester where I was like, I'm only going to take one class, or I'm going to go back to part time. And I think they don't tell you that you can do like full time and part time and kind of change it up how you feel when you need it. And so I think through that experience, I was able to help other students who are looking at doctoral programs be a little weary on cautious in how they're approaching those conversations, and also know like ultimately, regardless of what anyone tells you, you need to do what's best for you. And as a woman in this field, I have expectations for myself and a life plan for myself that unfortunately for me, you can't tell me that it's not my time to go into this doctoral program, because I know my life, and I know if I want to be in misery for longer in school for the next 5 to 7 years, I'd rather do that before I start having a family and children and all of those things that I really desire in this life. And so I'm like, yes, I'll spend my 20s in pain if that means that I can enjoy my 30s and my 40s and my. And so I think that that's my biggest piece of advice is don't let anyone tell you you can't, or that it's not the right time. Just keep pursuing those opportunities. The other piece is that when I went into this PhD program, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I had 16 topics under the sun, and they switched every single semester. And honestly, if I was smart and also if I really was really strong, picking a topic and sticking to it for the whole program would have been really, really helpful. That is not the reality of what I experienced. And so at first, I was working with women, and then I wanted to work with first year students, and then it's just kind of shifted and morphed. So currently, I am interested in, I say currently because who knows if it'll change. No, I'm just kidding. I'm too far. It can't change now. But working in this field, I started working in the student organization office in College Station. And our office was made up of full-time professionals who worked on the admin side of making sure organizations were thinking about risks, having their constitution, bylaws, all of those things. And in that experience, I met with a lot of advisors and even student leaders who were struggling to remove their, not remove, but set aside some of their identities, their personal identities, for the good of the organization. And what I mean by that is, I had a student leader who wanted a worship ceremony to happen for a secular student organization and was really combative, like did not want to engage in this conversation of religious diversity at all. And that was really, really hard because the reality is, as a doctoral student, I am critically looking at these processes, these policies, and these practices on how they're going to holistically support the student experience that is not the majority student experience. And at Texas A&M and in College Station, um, it's a predominantly white institution, predominantly Christian. And even if a lot of our organizations do not identify as Christian organizations, a lot of them function that way, and a lot of them only recruit Christian members and like are very strategic in how they approach their recruitment process, because they have to be open and clear that this is actually not necessarily a secular organization, even though it is by their constitution and bylaws. So that idea kind of came up through my experience. And so my topic is looking at student affairs practitioners and how they challenge religious diversity in these spaces, how they navigate those conversations, and looking at their perceptions on how they're going to support their student leaders and student organizations um, for all religions. Because especially being in the Bible Belt in Texas, you're going to run into a lot of Christian students. And as a Christian myself, I have a unique positionality where I'm able to say, yes, I did grow up. My dad's a pastor. I grew up in a Baptist church. I like to say I'm a recovering Baptist because that's just where I'm at. But there, I have a unique positionality where my partner is Hindu, and so I am constantly challenged for the last 7 years of like, how am I showing up? How are my practices like always guaranteed holidays, right? Like I don't even have to worry. Christian holidays are going to be off. I'd never have to worry about that. Good Easter or Good Friday, we have a half day every year. Like that's always an expectation. Now, when it comes to Hindu holidays, that is a whole different conversation, and so I've learned a lot about culture and about community and what it means to be a different religion. And I think that really highlights my passion in creating spaces for students and staff alike to be comfortable in the spaces that they're in, regardless of their identity, their religious identity, because I think those spaces should be set up inherently to support all of those people and all of the variety of identities um, and religions, because it shouldn't necessarily be this um, cookie cutter image of what it's supposed to look like, right? So I could talk about that forever.
Well, like I said, being director of research, it's important, at least to have ways to sort of introduce research into our conversations within TACUSPA, without it being uh, too stuffy,
Yeah.
but helping people understand that, this is something that you were seeing in your life and in your work, and you thought, it might be interesting to study this in more detail. And that's really what this is. And so I think that's really important. As we wrap up, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about kind of your experience and journey into CUSPA. And then also, if you could tell us a little bit about the upcoming conference.
Yes, I would love to. Okay, so my journey into CUSPA started out in 2019 when I got a text message from Dr. Peck, actually, who said, "Hey, you should apply for the Thomas Mormon Fellowship Program." And I was like, "I don't even know what that is, but let me click the link." And of course, I was like, "This sounds amazing. I will apply." I was selected as a Thomas Mormon Fellow for 2019 to 2020. And I worked with Dr. Keith Lamb, who worked at Midwest. I think he's still at Midwestern State University. Um, and I remember meeting with him and being so scared and really not knowing what I was supposed to be doing fully. But my job was to help the foundation and think about ways that they can increase their social media, increase their ways that they're reaching membership. And so at that time, fellowships were a year long. And so I worked intensely with my mentor. We met monthly, and I worked on projects and initiatives to increase membership benefits for the foundation. And fast forward, after the fellowship application or completed, I was given the opportunity to serve as the director of marketing. Um, I think that was right after. No, I'm sorry. The next year, I went to conference and I got a scholarship to attend conference. Then I completed the case study competition, and my team won. It was made up of a really strong group of women, all from different field or different campuses. And just a little plug, you'll get to hear a little bit more about my story in TACUSPA. If you read our journal edition for the 100th year, our topic is, or our article is called From Name Tags to Group Chats. I think name tags to group chats, how a TACUSPA connection came to be. So if you want to know more about my story, you can definitely see it there. But a little bit about it's just really like continuing to give back to the association that poured so much into me as a new professional. I remember as a student leader, um, uh, graduating and being like, okay, I'm going to get to A&M and I'm going to get super involved. And then you get to A&M and you're like, wait, my job is not to be involved anymore. My job is to be the advisor of those who are involved. And that is very different than being a student leader who's involved. But I still was seeking that community, and TACUSPA was that for me, and it has been that for me. Is creating that community similar to like a student organization. I really thrive and love that piece of like connecting with people and just being able to like show up authentically and be and talk about your problems and concerns of in this field, because you need an army around you to be successful. And so through that experience, I was a director of marketing at some point, served as the vice president of membership and marketing, and just really have enjoyed my experience on the board. Um, then fast forward, I'm now president-elect. Super excited to come to the October conference. It's going to be October 1st through the 3rd at the University of Houston. I promise you, this is an event you don't want to miss. I am not just saying that because I'm on the planning committee, and that I genuinely think that the conference chairs have poured their blood, sweat, and tears into this conference, and they are really, really dedicated to making it a unique experience for members. And so if you haven't registered already, registration is open. A little side note is you can actually register right now, and you can click invoice me, and that means you don't have to pay till later, which I think is always a perk, especially because you want to get your approvals and your reports, and maybe you don't have your card on you today. That's okay. You can still register. That way it lets us know that you're coming, and we can make sure we have food for you. It's going to be one of the best events I think that the association has ever seen. And then I'll also get to share a little bit about my vision for TACUSPA 2026 at the end of the conference. So I'm really excited about that. I think that it's going to be a great as we celebrate 100 years, we also have the opportunity to build the foundation of what the next 100 years looks like in our association. And I think that's exciting. And I want people on my team who are excited about that. So if you're looking to join a committee or get involved, definitely reach out to me. I would love to get you plugged into the association. It really does give back so much more to you than you can ever imagine. So yeah, just a little plug about our awesome centennial celebration at the University of the University of Houston in Houston, Texas.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Shelby. Here's some takeaways that I got from this one. Servant leadership, that's always important to serve others and lead by example. Be willing to gain new experiences and opportunities, and use that to grow. Seek mentors, but also mentor others. Don't be intimidated by research, and don't be intimidated by getting involved. Be willing to elbow in to get your seat at the table, and get involved with TACUSPA. And with that, I'm going to actually turn it over to Dr. Billups, but thank you so much, Shelby.
Thanks again.
Thank you for viewing this webinar. We would also like to thank Shelby Hearn again for sharing with us. Please check our YouTube channel for more webinars like this one, as well as our other webinar types. If you missed a webinar this year, we invite you to watch the recording. If you're interested in presenting, serving as a panelist for a future webinar Wednesday, or participating in a pre-recorded webinar, please consider completing the proposal form. The link will be included in the description for this video. Finally, the TACUSPA membership year runs from January to December. If you're not yet a member of TACUSPA, we encourage you to join us. Thank you, and we hope you have a great day.